this afternoon I'm with Mike Jones, who was a captain in RAR and also in 2RR. Mike is in Wales, where it's miserable weather, and if you can tell by the shiny sheen on my forehead, I'm in Southeast Asia, where it's equatorial, hot and humid weather. But Mike, welcome, and it's so great to have you, and I appreciate that we finally managed to get together. Won't you tell us a little bit about your background, Mike, and how you ended up in the Rhodesian Army, perhaps where you went to school, that type of thing?
I'm born in South Africa, and then the last of five, and then my family moved up to northern Rhodesia, and where my mum got divorced from my dad, and so I grew up in northern Rhodesia, educated in southern Rhodesia, and then got a bursary. So I went to school at Selborne Rutledge in Salisbury, and then a brief time at Prince Edward, and then St. Stephen's Bala. But after that period, I got a bursary from Anglo American, and I went to England and studied agriculture. On returning, I obviously did my 2 years coming back, and then got called up at intake 134 in '73, I think it was.
Yeah.
So that's vaguely the background. So South African born, Rhodesian by choice.
And so you ended up at Llewellyn?
Yeah, intake 134, went on to Osby's, and my course officer was Simon Horroff, and I think I was a bit of an awkward bugger, and I take my hat off to Simon Horroff, because how he didn't RTU me on numerous occasions, I don't know. I think we were the first independent company to cross the Zambezi River. This was when Kabora was filling, and the river was still a river and not a lake. And we had a couple of fleeting contacts over there. And then I came under the umbrella of Bruce Snellgo under one Lindip, as he took over as acting OC at the time, and I finished my service there. And then when I got called up to 2RR, I was in the out of prescribed area, so it was B Company 2RR with But York as a subaltern at the time, and then later on as company commander. So I reverted back to zero rank, and then slowly came up through the ranks until basically to WO2, and then finally White Tabber, and then a one pipper, and then from there I moved on to RAR and became a full lieutenant, and later on captain.
Gosh, it sounds like you were in for the full duration, Mike. Pretty much.
Yes, very much so. My time with 2RR, I think, was incredibly valuable at the end, because once we went on to continuous, I think we all realized how serious the war was then, and they started doing things like tracker training and other courses, etc. And I had the good fortune to be under company commanders like But York, John Bissett. They were guys in a league of their own. But York, who's in Ndebele and was in Pogoto, which means rockhead, was an incredible soldier, an incredible man in his lifetime. A lot of respect, and we were very, very good friends. I can remember one incident when we were down in the Gonorzo area, and Pogoto, was saying, we've been deployed here for quite a long time. There's one platoon in call sign that always coming up with something. What are you doing differently to everybody else? So I said, no, we know the area well. I grew up on Liebix, which is next door to the Gonorzo, all the normal drivel. And then Pogoto said to me, hang on a moment, I'm going to come on patrol with you. So, my heart was sinking and whatever. And we, as territorial force, kitted ourselves out. We weren't really looked after well, so we made our own webbing, our own backpacks. And we also did, because that water area was so dry for water, is we would make 20-liter very plastic bags up, which we could tie up and seal. And then we had our own Rhodesian camouflage sock, which we put over there, and then we would drop them in various places so that we didn't have to go either to the Ununetse or the Limpopo to find water in that Cook's Corner area.
Yeah.
So when Butch said he was coming on patrol, I said, "Well, are you coming as a major, or are you coming on as one of my troopies?" I said, "No, it's one of your troopies." So of course he's a strong man, so we loaded him up with water and other things, etc., etc. And we, walked through to the game fence, and I cut the fence to go through. And he just pulled me aside from the other guys and said, "Look, Mike, I told you, Fort Victoria 2 days ago, you stay 5 kilometers away from the border." I said, "Yes, sir, but you didn't say which side." So it was after that when he saw the number of crossing points, etc. Because as we crossed grain in Mozambique, not very far in, probably about a K in, nobody was anti-tracking at that stage. So you just saw route after route after route coming in. And so, "Oh, what is this?" I said, "No, that's in those hot, dry conditions, with very little wind, your tracks stayed fresh for a hell of a lot longer. They looked
Yeah.
clean." And I said, "No, that's from 3 weeks ago. No, that's from this one's fresh."
Yeah.
And it was from
Just
that
just
deployment that we were allowed to go into Mozambique after that.
just my limited knowledge, because I never was deployed in that area, but Crook's Corner is where the three countries, South Africa, Rhodesia, and Mozambique, come together, right?
That's correct. Yeah, it's a
Okay.
very, it's very sparse and scrub mapani until
Yeah,
you hit that
dry, not
floodplain.
much water.
Yeah, and then it's as thick as anything. Well, quite often when we were in Mozambique or whatever, we would cross the Limpopo, take off our shirts, and as we were deployed as four-man call signs, where you were meant to ambush at night and cross grain during the day. Quite often we would cross over, take off our shirts, and the South Africans would take us into their camp, and we get a good night's sleep, etc. And they were quite shattered that the officer was on patrol with his men, because that obviously didn't really happen at that stage in the South African army. So quite often, well, 2 or 3 or 4 times we went across and stepped on the South African side, and then crossed the Limpopo back into Rhodesia.
Yeah.
So they were long. We gained a lot of experience and learned our why. I think during our national service, and at the beginning of 2RR, I don't think we needed to shoot anybody. We were so inept that they would have just died laughing. And in time we just improved and improved and improved. We got in-house training. We went on tracking courses, and various other things. So my time with 2RR was um, very good. I was sorry to leave the battalion, but Spider Legs, Colonel French Spider Legs, I was meant to be being paid as a regular, and I was actually only being paid as a territorial. But of course, I no longer had makeup pay from my company, so I don't think my earnings actually covered my mess bill. I was always in debt and goodied and whatever it happened to be. So I then went up for interview um, in Salisbury, and they said, "Well, with your background, you're going to go to RAR." And I was horrified because most of my platoon, which had broken up at the end of continuous, had gone through to RLI, and a couple of the guys to the Scouts.
What year are
And
we talking, Mike?
70s, end of 76, end of 76. So I thought I would probably end up in one of those units. And so when they told me RAR, I was a bit horrified, but I was so broke at the time. I said, if I turn this down, they said, well, then you have to wait another 6 weeks, and you can reapply. So thank goodness I took the RAR, because it was probably one of the best moves I ever made.
Yeah, yeah. What was it like working with the black soldiers, Mike?
Well, it was a very difficult thing. I'd had quite a serious punch up in the Rhodesia area just before I moved through, where a lot of civilians were killed, which I won't go into details with. Um, and, but we got 11 good at that stage of the game, so we were pretty chuffed with ourselves. It was a combined operation between Army, ourselves, I think a few young party, and the old farmers of the area who, they used to volunteer. I can't remember what the unit was called, but they coughed and spluttered their way down the road where we got to, and we snuck into another meeting and had a punch up there. And there were sadly, a lot of dead civilians and And at the time, I was, pretty chuffed with the result. Transferring to RAR, initially I had my platoon warrant officer was Abias Mashona, whose family had been taken out, and he was a legend in his time. Very small, cheeky bugger. It was very, very hard to break through him because generally, when a young subaltern comes in, it's his platoon warrant officer that actually guides him and holds his hands and whatever. Whereas I was coming in as a mature soldier who had been in action before, and so we had loggerheads quite often. But once we'd broken the ice, and he realised that I wasn't. I mean, that I wasn't second lieutenant straight out of school events that I had been shot at before and had shot people. Got on extremely well, and but he was with his family having been slaughtered, he had to be held at a close range, close range. But what was wonderful with RAR is, I loved working in the Ghana Reserve because there was nobody else there. Where suddenly now you operated in amongst villages and Judito and whatever. And even though I grew up on Limix ranches in the Lowveld, you don't understand village life or goody or anything like that. So I learned a hell of a lot and learned that when you walk into OPs, it's not like the RLI where you walk in 5-6 kilometers. You walk in 20-25 kilometers on a night walking, and that's how we operated. So it was a learning curve for me as well. But they were very different to white troops because once they believed in you, they would go anywhere for you and do anything for you. Whereas with white troops, they would think, hang on, maybe you don't think this is such a good idea. It's a bit stupid. Do you have a brain at all, type thing. Which I had a few incidents, on the Limpopo when we were illegally in Mozambique and when we were legally in Mozambique. I had a few incidents where I made the wrong tactical decision. Whereas the RAR were very forgiving on things like that. And one of the reasons I decided to go regular is that when I was on my own on Libix, on the Makuku section of Libix, I could see where we had a contract in the Miranda's Tribal Trust gave, 15 kilometers as the crow flies. John Barkley got taken out. I'm trying to remember the other chap who got taken out. He was on Majingwe, which I ran for a while. And he got taken out with an RPG-2, I think, when he stopped to open a gate. So those are the guys that I know closely. A lot of the Mateki Hills people I got to know very well as a youngster and growing up in the area. So I'm just trying to remember names off the top of my head, but but all the Mateki Hills people we knew, extremely well, and they got flattened and ambushed and killed, sons and fathers and whatever. Trying to pull names off the top of my head is difficult. But we, before things got really bad there, we played tennis together down in that area.
Were you familiar with the Stunders, Jan Stunder, etc.?
Yes, that Afrikaans community down there tended to do all their shopping in Messina and whatever. Their children went to school in Petersburg and places like that.
Yeah.
So we often would meet at the Lion and Elephant and play tennis and
yes,
and try and drink the pub dry, etc. And they were always a magnificently open and friendly society down there. But the ranches were big ranches. I can remember one incident. B&B ranches. I think it was B&B ranches. We had just come out of Mozambique on a long patrol, and I think we were at Rutenga at the time, Jock Rutenga, before you moved the Jock to Rhodesia area. And off, used to get drunk on a bar. My barmaid's fart at that stage, and I think I had 3 beers and was so drunk I had to be helped in my stretcher. And then got woken up at about 1:30 in the morning because we were a tracking call sign, and I was still as drunk as anything to get on a helicopter. It was a full moon because one of the homesteads had been tapped. I think it was B&B ranches, on the other side of the Booby River. So we flew through there, and gone onto tracks. One of the mistakes that's come back and haunt you later. There had been nobody really taken out. I think there's one dead pair he'd forgotten. He'd hid behind a railway line, post for the fence, and opened up with his RPD, and of course ricochets took him out. But we did a couple of 360s and got onto tracks. And of course, being in ranching country and not a lot of human movement around, tracking was reasonably easy. After about 5 kilometers, we hit a grid where they'd rested. And I thought, this is bloody strange because these guys don't rest after 5Ks. They'll rest after 20Ks, but not 5. But I was still very, very hungover. And we'd been sitting cross grains in front, and the guys in front had picked up tracks and were still going in. I think they were heading for, can't remember the tribal trust land, but down in that area there. So the cross-graining team had picked it up. So the choppers came back to uplift us, the cross-grain in front of them. And what had actually happened, and because my brain wasn't working, is the goose had actually put a mine down. And if my brain had been operating at the time, I would have said, why had they stopped here and spent, not spent the 4 minutes waiting for the chopper, clearing the chopper and getting, I would have found it and unfortunately detonated the mine. And the old bugger who was the guard, who used to go and sit on ranches, for 4 or 5 weeks as a guard, he died in the back of the Land Rover that hit the mine. That's one of the things that haunted me. If my brain had been in gear, that he would have lived. So, my colonel when I first arrived there was Mike Shute. Later became General Mike Shute. My company commander was Butch Zederberg, very good soldier. He was, I think, territorial originally as well. Excellent shoulder, a brave man and whatever. And Pat Lawless was in I think Tom Fulton was there at the time, and Jim Hardy, he got culled later on in the contact with Pat and I in Mtoko. But they took me under their wing because I was in awe of these professional soldiers. Being a bloody farmer or rancher at the time, so I was in awe with these guys because they were career soldiers and professionals. Whereas I felt that I was fairly limited, having gone through a 4-month Osby and then come up through the ranks as such. But I think probably coming up through the ranks stood me in good stead. But they all made me feel very, very welcome. And, we were deployed in the Wank area, did a couple of fire forces, and then spent a lot of time in Zambia. Later on, Mick McKenna took over as colonel. Excellent man. Tony Clark was adjutant at the time. It was a learning experience of a totally different way of soldiering. Abies Mashona, the first walk-in we did, and we dropped Park into hills, and we got to about day 3 or day 4, and the Majibas had already picked up our tracks at that stage. So I got hold of Abies, but we were a very big platoon, 45 strong, being anti-tank platoon. We've seen nothing, and he said, "No, Ishe, wait. The women are clothes." And I said, "Yeah, so?" He said, "They should be cooking food for the children now. They're washing clothes. It's not the right thing for them to be doing at this time of the day." So, sure enough, they went off for the washing and whatever. And just before last night, a couple of groups came out with a good. I mean, as if I'd been operating, which I had done in OPs before, we would never have picked that up. Never have picked it up. So those sort of things were great. I mean, I wish I could name other people, who were such an influence. And I think at that stage of the game, the integration between the white forces and the black forces was slowly beginning to merge. And Bala Bala was training people to go into the independent companies as such. But one incident I do remember was I was attached to my soldiering hero, Bruce Snellgar. Initially, we were I'd taken a knock on the head, so I was on, well, sort of light duties as such, but it's like falling off a horse. You must get back on that horse, otherwise you don't want to get back on it ever again. So um, I was attached to the 81 millimeter mortar platoon as an anti-tank platoon commander. Knew nothing about bloody mortars at all, and we were to provide the security for a big operation with the whole commando going over into Zambia, right down in the Mana Pools area on that airstrip, and we were there to secure the defense of the airstrip. And then the staging point in Zambia, we were meant to provide protection for refueling, etc. There, I think there were political talks at the time, and we were stood down. So the whole commander went and deployed in the Koroi area. And initially, I can't remember what country club, but we had a country club there. So I was with my troops, and RAR always had an officers' mess where the officers ate, and an NCO and an NCO's mess, in the bush or whatever for feeding purposes. And I was attached to support company, a support commander, and we dug in around the golf course at I can't remember the country club. And I was obviously invited by the company commander to come and eat in their mess, and because they had a combined mess, NCOs and officers. And I said, well, what about my NCOs? And he said, no, can't. So I didn't, and I wouldn't. I ate with my troops.
Are we talking support commander RLI?
Yes.
Okay.
And I was support company RAR attached, a platoon attached to the. Anyway, later on, I should come, a couple of days later, come up to the thing and support commander with Fire Force at the time. And they said, come on to the club. So I said, well, can my NCOs come with me? It was no. So I didn't go with him. So, he got very, very irritated with me. And I suddenly got told to pack up and join Bruce Snellgar, who were right down in the DPLs. And at that stage, it was Ndebele coming into Shona country. So the ink was always good. And Bruce Snellgar kept on saying, why are we've got hot ink and we're not succeeding? Mark, how do you RAL people do it? And this is great about Bruce Snellgar. He's very, very open. And I said, well, I think your troops are really good. Give them a target, push them in, and they're there. But don't ask them to go and sit in an AP for 5 days. They're not all orientated that way. And your walk-ins are too short. So I said, well, we've got hard time. Would you do the walk-in with your guys? I said, sure. And we did about a 20, 25 kilometer walk-in.
Sure.
And as at first light, the informer pointed out village, and we went in line, and the choppers were in the air because obviously we were talking to them, and there were choppers in the air. And I very fortunately glanced when I had eyes, of course, and I could see little specks on the horizons, of Fire Force. So I managed to turn them, turn left, roll out, blah 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 blah. So at first light, and we threw our smoke grenades on either side of our position and fired that little flare into the village. And of course, we hit the ground running. So the Fire Force was very, very successful. Got quite a number of boots, etc., etc. And of course, that night when we arrived in back with Bruce Snellgar, etc., Colonel had sent crates of beer down. It was a beerful thing. So 11 or 12 crates of beer arrived. And of course, now RLI and RAR were drinking, etc., together. But of course, the RAR had to sing and dance and whatever. And then, of course, the RLI guys did their thing. And they did they all got naked. Well, a few of them got naked. And they did the dance of the flaming arsehole, where you have a bog roll in the crack in the rear end and a clit, and you dance and run around. And well, the RAR were absolutely flabbergasted with this, as you can imagine. But by the time we left them, the guys had exchanged goodies, wrote to each other. They were soldiers greeting soldiers. It was lovely.
Yeah. Tell me about your time in 2RR, whereabouts were you based?
2RR, initially we did a lot of in our hurricane area.
Okay.
And then, but as the war, and that was a call up. You do a call up and then go back home, and a call up and go back home. But then later on, once we got mobilized, we operated, mainly in that Ghana Reserve Rutenga area,
Uh,
um, right through 76 and start of 77. Then, of course, I went, across through to RAR at that stage.
yeah,
But
our hurricane
sorry,
area, Mount Darwin, I'm trying to think of was it Cheweshi?
the
Um,
Chiweshi Trust Land.
yeah,
What was it?
the
Marymount Mission,
purchase
Marymount
area.
Mission.
Yeah, yeah, I spent a lot of time there. I know all those TGLs and um,
I get so confused now because I've operated there and then down around the Chirezi area and then by Bridge area and then up near Wanky. So, my mind collapses on which tribal trust land I was in at the
yeah,
time.
mm,
Obviously, the Mirandas I knew well because I grew up in that area,
yeah,
as a teenager, etc. And of course, it was quite crazy going back to St. Stephen's Bala where I'd been educated now, which now was Depot 1 RER, pick
yeah.
up troops and things like that. So, yeah, a lot of nostalgia for that area.
Mike, I think this internet connection is too unstable, brother. I think you freezing up, I'm freezing up. I think maybe we should try again, maybe next week, and see if we can't. Let me see what I can salvage from this episode, and then come back to you with